Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David. This week's episode is about the fight night, Whittaker V Gastelum. Another reminder that these episodes are about analyzing the judges' scorecards when they do go to decision. And this week has been terrible. This week is one of the worst cards in terms of judging I've seen in a long time, and we'll go into it and I'll slightly break it down. This is terrible. I mean, as I was watching this, I was thinking we were going to get one of those, it's not that I don't like doing this. Of course, I like talking about decisions and slightly breaking down how nuanced they are and how certain judges see it a certain way and certain judges see it this way and how certain judges are just fucking retarded. But what's best for, hell, the fans, even the fighters, is that phrase fighters use after they do an interview, which is, it's kind of a cliche at this point, which is you got to leave it out of the judge's hands, because sometimes you just don't know what they're seeing, and sometimes you don't know what's going on, because some of the decisions tonight were garbage. I mean, this was bad. Like, really, really bad. I mean, again, I just don't know what they're... Again, we'll just start. We'll go for the first injustice of the night. And for me, that should be Penne versus Godinez. Godinez. I'm going to say Godinez. Penne versus Godinez. This was a split decision victory for Penne. And my scorecard reads 29-28 Godinez. I had it a 10-9 in the first for Penne, and then 2 10-9s for the second and the third for Godinez. Now, let me read off the judges' scorecards. Mike Bell had it 29-28 Penne. Derek Clearly had it 29-28 Penne. And Rick Winter had it 29-28 Godinez. Now, this is really all over the place, because this fight was slightly all over the place, right? A lot of movement, so I can get why this is really all jumbled. But I'm going to start with Rick Winter. So Rick Winter, for me, gets the first round incorrect. He gives a 10-9 for Godinez. In that very first round. Right. In that very first round, Godinez gets a takedown. Right. And then she gets reversed, gets taken down by Penne. And Penne has really good clinch work and ground and pound. Enough to win her the round. Okay, so even though Godinez kind of starts off kind of strong, Penne kind of does enough in that round to win the round, as reflected on me and 2 other judges' scorecards. I know I don't want to bend off the other judges, but I'm just using it to make my case. All right, but she does enough to win that very first round. Now we go into the second, where all the judges give it to Penne. Now, this is where I disagree. All the judges gave her a 10-9 in that second to Penne. And in that second, Godinez had really good striking. She landed a lot of her shots. A lot of her shots went through. They caught Penne. And she had two weird takedowns. I'm going to call them weird takedowns. They're not full takedowns, but there were two of those. There was this motion that Penne gave where when they would kind of clinch up against the fence, Penne would kind of jump on her looking for subs, but Godinez kind of caught it and slammed her, right? If this were a men's fight, this would definitely be a factor in decisions, but for some reason, because I'm not saying it's because it's a women's fight, but I assume the action was different. I don't think the judges took this into account. So Penne gets on top of Godinez, and Godinez grabs her and throws her on the ground. Essentially slams her on the ground. She does it again. She does it twice. Now, I don't know if you count these as takedowns, but they're big actions that matter, right? Someone jumps on top of you, and you throw them down. These are big motions. These are big actions she's doing. This is like one slam, and the other is a regular takedown. And the other takedown is one that leads is a scramble that ends up with Godinez on top. So there's a lot of action where Godinez slams her down. Then there's like a slight scramble that leads with Godinez on top. And some nice striking. So again, this is a round that's a lot more clear than the other two rounds, but it's enough to give Godinez the round. And to me, Godinez won that round, but for all the other judges' scorecards, they gave it to Penne. I don't see how they gave it to Penne, but they gave it to Penne. And again, in the third round, all three judges gave it to Godinez at the very end. That one's pretty explanatory. Godinez just continues the striking she had in that second round, and gets two takedowns. Here we go, and gets two takedowns. This one, I believe both of them were tosses. Right in the second round, she tosses her, and then scrambles with her. That's the second takedown, technically. And then in this round, they're both tosses / slams. And then basically has some control in the clinch. Throughout this fight, Penne had a lot of clinch control. Not a lot of action, but clinch control. And in the third round, Godinez initiates the clinch. She gets some clinch control. So she does enough in the second and the third to win this, but the judges just kind of fucked this up in my view. Rick Winter just scrambles the scorecards, and then Mike Bell and Derek Clearly give, again in my view, the second round to go to Penne, including Rick Winter actually. Rick Winter, the only thing I really agree with here is that first round, which the other judges give to Penne. I think this is a big injustice. I was thinking that Godinez won this fight. Instead, Penne won. It's a split D. It is what it is, but to me, it's a big injustice. Second injustice of the night, probably the biggest one, the most clear one, the one that really doesn't even make any sense. I'll read off my scorecard. Now, this was a technical decision because Romanov was unable to continue because he got struck in the groin. I might add, looking at it in full speed, it looked light. it looked really, really light. And then looking at it in slow-mo, it didn't look bad. But again, it's a groin strike. It hit him, obviously. He's tired, so it has some effect on him. I'm not really going to talk about the groin strike, just the aftermath of the groin strike, which is that you have to now judge what that minute of the third round. Now I'm going to read off my scorecard. It was 10-9 for the first round for Espino, 10-9 for Romanov in the second. And then in that third, based off of that 1 minute, which was very... So this is where I have the biggest problem. It was so easy. A 10-9 for Espino, making it a 29-28 for Espino. Now, again, during the commentary, they were talking about how, hey, maybe, he hit him in the groin and he ended the fight that way and blah, 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 blah. Is it possible that the judges could take it into their own hands? And this is what I kind of saw. Even though Mark Smith didn't take a point, the judges took this into their own hand, because either the judges weren't watching or they just became activists and turned this into their own thing. They essentially gave the win to Romanov, even though in that minute, Romanov is getting, in that third round, before the groin strike, Espino took down Romanov twice. He took him down twice. I mean, in that minute, the obvious winner is Espino. And so, let me read off the judges' scorecards. This is really bad, because, oh my God, these scorecards are just, it's... So Tony Weeks gives a 10-9 to Romanov in the first. A 10-9. Now let me explain to you what happened in the first round. In the first round, Espino took down Romanov twice with ground and pound. Twice. And I'm looking at this scorecard, and Tony Weeks gives a 10-9 for Romanov. This isn't a typo. He gives a 10-9. Oh my, I don't know how to feel. On what planet? I don't know what this. Like someone should get fired for this. And I don't want to, shit. Like I have any power. I'm just fucking talking into a mic. I'm just saying. This is that type of stuff that should get reviewed. I know fighters do that thing where they're like, oh, we'll bring it up to the commission. The commission should actually review this. This should be reviewable. This is disgusting. Tony Weeks gives a 10-9 for Romanov. After Romanov gets, we're looking at the fight and we're thinking, oh man, Romanov's been great his whole... I'm jumping off here, but Romanov's been great in the UFC, right? Proceeds to come in, gets taken out twice by Espino. It's Espino's round. It's objectively his round. There is no argument otherwise. It's his round. Everyone is surprised that Romanov has been taken down twice. The dude that takes down other people and ground and pounds them into a victory. Espino wins that round, but instead Tony Weeks gives him a 10-9. Now, Chris Lee does the right thing and gives Espino a 10-9. Then Dave Hagen, who, oh my God, I keep saying these names because if you go back into the catalog and just and hear all the injustices or the honorable mentions, these are the same names that are coming up. Once in a while it's Derek Clearly. Once in a while it's Chris Lee. Most of the time it's Tony Weeks, it's Dave Hagen, it's some other random judge. And these are bad. These are deadly bad, and no one's going to say anything. Dave Hagen gives a 10-9 for Romanov. This has to be a typo. This has to be a typo. On what are you what are you watching? A 10-9 for Romanov. Okay, we go to the second, where Romanov turns it around. Okay, in that second round, Romanov gets 2 takedowns with big ground and pound for about 2 minutes. Basically, Romanov does what Espino did in the first, but he has killer ground and pound. He's giving out ground and pound, but the rest of the round he's kind of just chilling, right? He's tired. It's obvious that he's tired, and in between he's kind of resting. But it's obvious that it's his round. He won that round clearly, okay? And it's reflected on all 3 judges. So let me get this. Let me get this straight. Let me get this extremely straight. Romanov wins the second round. Clearly. No one can argue that. He wins the second round. It should be tied up going into the third. And two judges. So it should be tied up. It should be 19-19. 2 judges have it 20-18 going into the third. 2 judges have it. Oh my God. So even if Espino were to win the third, let's say Espino wins the third, right? And they mark it. It's a split D still, and Espino loses. But forget about that. We'll go into the third now, right? We're going to the third where he hits the groin strike on him. And essentially, Dave Hagen gives a 10-9 for Espino. Now I'm confused because I don't know how you give a 10-9 in the first for Romanov, but then a 10-9 for Espino in the third. It's almost like he just wrote in the 10-9. Because look, I'm not going to sit here and go, I believe Dave Hagen if he says I watched the first and I watched the third and got 2 different results. Because it's correct. His third round assessment is correct, but his first round assessment is terrible. And you can say this, and the same thing for Tony Weeks. It's the same scorecard, and then Chris Lee just has it blank, which means I assume it's for Romanov. I assume that third is for Romanov. Actually, I take that back. I'm sorry. I assume that third is for Espino, because that would make this a split D. This was the worst. This might have been one of the worst. And you know what's funny about this is during the commentary they're talking about it, and I'm surprised they didn't bring up. I was looking. This was a while ago. I was looking through the vault of just fights, and I found like a Dominic Cruz fight where he fought. I can't remember the guy's name, but he fought somebody. This was back in WEC, and he fought somebody, and I don't remember if this is an illegal knee. I think this is an illegal knee. I think he hit him with an illegal knee, and it went to technical decision, and Dom won. And I can bet you that if you look back on that scorecard, it's going to show Dom winning, right? Because Dom won, yes, but it's going to show probably Dom won that last round. Where in the world Where in the world do you get this? My big gripe here probably, looking at this scorecard, my big gripe here isn't probably, it's not even against the third round scores. It's the fact that they gave Romanov an extra round. When I heard his name being put up and Romanov shook his head, I'm like, okay, first of all, he probably shook his head because he's like, man, in his head, he's like, wow, it was tied up and I lost. I got rode and then we stopped the fight. This was the worst one of the night. And it's not even because of that third round where it ends in technical decision. It's because of the first round, which Tony Weeks and Dave Hagen don't know how to score a fight. They don't know how to score a fight. And it confuses me because with that same thinking, if you're going to score a 10-9 for Romanov in the first, for Dave Hagen and Tony Weeks, you might as well just give a 10-9 for Espino in the second, because in the second, Espino got taken down twice and got delivered ground and pound on. So why in the hell do they not just flip the score? It's bad. It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. It's horrendous, and I still don't get why this is happening. There have been so many fights in Vegas. There have been so many ways to get this right, and they fluff it. They fluff it. Another fight, I thought this was a very bad decision. Big injustice for me. Was Cortez versus Kish. I'll read my scorecard. Minus 29-28. Kish. I had a 10-9 for Cortez in the first, and then a 10-9 for Kish in the second and the third. I'll read off the judges' scorecard. Derek Cleary had a 29-28 Cortez. Saul Diamata had a 29-28 Kish, and Rick Winter had it 30-20. Oh, bro, I'm telling you, this has been terrible. This is bad. This is fucking bad. 30-27. I'm not even exaggerating when I say when I heard these scorecards getting written. I'm just going to be honest with you. When I hear these getting set out by Bruce, when I heard him say 30-27, I almost did a dance. I almost did like a dance. Like, no one's watching this. I think Rick Winter was just stunned by how... I'm not going to... Listen, 30-27 is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. A 30-27. So let's go to the first. So in the first, my card again, Cortez wins the first round, right? All three judges get that right. It's fairly simple. Hell, I probably don't even have to explain. Yeah, I mean, she wins the first round. If I can find my notes. Yeah, it's you don't even have to explain it. She obviously won the first round. Boom. Okay. Here we go to the second, where things get a little trippy. Okay. Kish outstrikes Cortez, and even though she was taken down, it was for a little amount of time. Now here's this part, right, where we talk about people getting taken down and it not really mattering, right? So in the previous fight, I believe in the fight before this one, Pena gets taken down a couple times. But he gets up immediately. I mean, immediately, to where, to a scorecard, it doesn't matter. because there's no action being done. He took him down and he gets back up. Essentially, it kind of cancels out the takedown, if you want to be honest, unless this is like, one of those back and forth fights where it's all on the ground, but at the very end, he takes him down just to show another aspect of mixed martial arts, to where, oh, he took him down at the very last second, he got him, he wins the round, right? There's those tiny nuanced things. But in this fight, Kish's striking was so good that when Cortez takes her down, it was for very little, nothing happened, and they got up. And she was very active. Okay, there was this fight, this part of the fight where Cortez had her in a body lock. Reminded me a little bit of McKenna versus damn, I'm forgetting names today, dude. Versus Michaela Hansen. I think it's Michaela Hansen or Kayla Hansen. There was that fight where at the very end of the first, Kayla gets her down. Kayla gets McKenna down, and McKenna's just hitting from her back, essentially. She's inside Kayla's body lock. And the same thing here, where Kish is inside Cortez's body lock, and she's the only one giving ground and pound. She's the only one giving ground and pound, while Cortez is kind of searching for subs. There's searching for subs isn't enough, right? It's not, it's one thing to control your opponent for an entire round while searching for subs while your opponent is not doing anything. But in this part, she was much more active, enough to where this round is hers. And the only person who saw that was Saul D'Amato. Was Saul D'Amato and Derek Cleary. So they saw what I saw. Rick Winter, on the other hand, is just... Rick Winter's having a ball. He gives a 10-9 to Cortez in this round, right? And then we go to the third, where Kish is winning this. I mean, this third round is hers. It's hers. It's her round. She's winning on the feet. All her strikes are going through. She gets a knockdown. This is one of the biggest cases where, listen, when you get a knockdown, this is usually your fight. This is your round. Excuse me. This is your round. She gets a knockdown, and she gets taken down at the close to, I believe, the middle of the fight, in the middle of the round. She gets taken down, and she gets ground and pounded for a little bit. She gets ground and pounded. She gets hit with big shots. Gets back up immediately. This is that case of when you go down and you don't spend that much time. It's fair. It's maybe 30 seconds to a minute of time they were on the ground. Maybe. Very, very little time they were on the ground, where she gets hit a couple times and then gets back up. And right when she gets back up, they're back to wherever they were, where Kish is winning again on the feet. That small action at the where Cortez takes her down is not enough to win her that round. And again, Rick Winter saw it, 10-9 for Cortez. And Derek Cleary, who, it's not even making any sense. Because listen, Derek Cleary, essentially the same thing that happened in the second round, happened in the third round, but Kish's striking was much more clear in this one. And Derek Cleary just says, you know what? I'll just give it to Cortez this time. I don't think they're actually... Oh my fucking God. Someone's not watching these fights. There's... 2 and 3 are virtually identical with slight differences. where Kish is the obvious winner. And Derek clearly decides, you know what? Let me just give it to Cortez. I'm not even going to talk about Rick Winter, because Rick Winter just says, you know what, Cortez won the whole fight. Like, you can't even argue. She won the whole fight. This is a big injustice. I mean, this one. Hell, the Penne fight, I think, was an injustice. The Romanov fight is a big injustice. This Cortez fight is a big injustice. It's just bad. All around bad. All right, now we're going to go to the honorable mentions. Again, honorable mentions are for rounds that I believe are scored incorrectly. Maybe fluffed a little bit. Someone gives out a 10-8, or someone doesn't give out a 10-8, or they just scored the round in a wrong section, but ultimately the correct fighter won. Now for the first injustice of the night, that would go to Bird, who gave a 10-8 for Gravely in that first round. The fight ended in a TKO, but gives a 10-8 in that very first round. Here's what's weird about it, though. The other judges gave a 10-9. It was back and forth on the feet. But Gravely eventually just came into his own and dominated the round. Multiple takedowns. I believe, I want to say like 3 or 4. It's a lot of takedowns, but he didn't murder the kid enough to where it's a 10-8. Big ground and pound, though. He was delivering a lot of ground and pound. And he dropped him. But remember, there was a period in the first part of that round where it's kind of back and forth on the feet a little bit. It's he's moving around. But this is just another case of one fighter's obviously winning the fight, or obviously winning the round, and a judge just decides, hey, I can give out a 10-8 here. There's no need for a 10-8 here. And I'll talk about a fight later in the honorable mentions where there's a temptation where you're watching a fight and there's a temptation to give out a 10-8, and the judges showed some restraint that I really liked. So that's the first honorable mention for that first round of the Gravely versus Birchak fight. The second honorable mention is Pena versus Munoz. The obvious person won, Pena. For this one, Mike Bell gave 29-28 for Munoz, and then Saul Diamant and Rick Winter gave out 29-28 for Pena. Now their scorecard reflects my scorecard, which is 10-9s in the second and the third for Pena, and then a 10-9 in the first for Munoz. So this would go to Mike Bell, who rightly gives out the first round to Munoz. And then the second he gives that went out to Munoz as well. If I can find the notes. Right. In this second round, Pena is outstriking Munoz clearly. His shots are getting through. And again, in this one, he was taken down, but just like in a lot of fights, if nothing was done on the ground, it doesn't really matter. If this isn't like really even on the feet, and then he takes him down at the very end, then it doesn't really matter. And Pena was the obvious. His shots were going through, and his output was up, and his striking was he was most definitely outstriking Munoz enough to where he won that second round, and the other two judges saw that, but Mike Bell gave it to Munoz in that one, and that's where that's the honorable mention. That one was a little trippy for me because it is a split D, and the right person won, but I still want to give at least my reasoning why I saw that second round for Pena. And I think the last one isn't an honorable mention, but it's more, again, this whole Injustice For All MMA is essentially just me shitting on judges, but I want to give like a golf clap to these three judges for the Alhassan versus Malkoun fight. Chris Lee, Bird, and Camijo. They gave it. This was a 30-27 across the board. My scorecard was also 30-27. The reason why I'm giving a golf clap is because as I was watching this fight and I scored each one, and I knew my reasoning for scoring each one. I'll explain. In the first, yes. So in the first, Malkoun gets four takedowns. They're 4 takedowns. Now, nothing crazy, nothing big on the ground and pound or anything. He just gets 4 takedowns, right? It's an obvious 10-9. He then gets oh my god. He then controls Alhassan, and this time he's giving out ground and pound, but it wasn't insane ground and pound enough to where it warrants. You see, there's different levels of ground and pound, right? There's the intense ground and pound that you normally see from people like Khabib or some other guy, I can't remember, to where there's certain ground and pounds to where oh man, that's going to be a 10-8 by the time this is done. But this was more like I have to stay active on top kind of situation. And it wasn't enough to give it a 10-8, but because of the length of time he spent on top of him, I can see why they would give out a 10, someone would be tempted to give out a 10-8, but it wasn't, and I'm glad that they didn't. In that third round, he had multiple takedowns, and he rode him pretty much the entire round. I could see how they, again, you're tempted to give out a 10-8, but it wasn't a lot of enough action to give out a 10-8. And in the majority of these rounds, he's kind of just riding Alhassan. So again, there's a temptation to give out a 10-8, but the judges in this one kind of restrained from just throwing up an 8 in one of these rounds. I believe if this were in different judges' scorecards, there would be a 10-8 in some of these rounds. But yeah, that kind of ends the whole thing. Overall, this card just reflects why I kind of do this, which is occasionally there will be cards where you get a shit ton of decisions and the judges are just going to have a field that they're just going to have fun. When this gets to the third, I just pray sometimes that, man, please finish, please get a finish. And they just don't want to. Unless it's like super clear, these cards will look cleaner, but when you get into essentially they had 4 straight split Ds. At that point it's going to be a little jumbly, but some of these are just terrible. Again, I go back to the Romanov fight where if you don't score the first for Espino, you're not watching the fight. If you don't score the first for that man, you should be set to the B League. You should be scoring something else. There's no way you watch that first round and go, Romanov won that. Because if that's the case, then you might as well have just put down a 10-9 for Espino in that second. That's all I got. Thank you for listening, and God bless.